Right. Next time.
We're good to go.
We're good to go? Okay, so we will call the meeting to order for Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, April 11th, 2023. Welcome, everyone. We are, I think, streaming live this evening, as well as members in the gallery, so great to see everyone. I'm going to ask for the first item, was items added to the agenda. I do have 3. One, to have a discussion about the Cape Breton Wren with regards to a Doug Griffith event. We'd like to add under item number 14, and the CAO will be speaking to that, so for items added. And then 2 in-camera contract negotiation updates as well. So those are the 3 items to add on that. We'll need to add tonight. Any others? Okay, perfect. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please, with the items up?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Any further discussion on the agenda? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, the next item is the review of the minutes. They have been provided in, excuse me, in your council package. So thank you to Shelley for those. We'd look for a motion to approve the minutes if there are no errors or omissions. Thank you. Councillor Sean Sampson has moved the minutes be approved. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. So we'll move right into our first presentation of the evening. We have just the one presentation this evening from Raising the Villages. Yeah, come on down. Jim Mustard is with us this evening to talk about the early years and starting strong. So Jim, welcome back.
Good evening. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Warden, council, legal, staff, public. Yeah, I was saying 6 months ago because my friend Margaret had just passed, so I remember now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what honored the event of her life by being over here and talking about Raising the Villages, Michiwajik. And I appreciate coming back. Thank you for the financial support. I think it really means a lot. So I'm not gonna ask for any more money. Now I'm gonna just see if we can be more of those kind of advocates that we all are in municipal council for getting more for our regions. So we'll just kind of have a little bit of a review of what it's about, but kind of putting out the ask. I just met with Inverness County last week, and I said, you guys have to pay some money, because Richmond County puts some money. But I also said, let's just think about maybe staff or elected officials participating in more. And I know we already have, through the coalition, some representation there, but just kind of like, everything's an opportunity in our region to get more services, more things for our communities. I think it's, no, I don't want that one. Share screen. Shelley told me how to do this. Okay, I'm gonna go back here. Cancel that share screen. Here, put this down. I'm gonna bring this one up. Oh, I see, I gotta share screen first.
No,
Okay, let me go back to Zoom.
And that's what happened when you don't listen to Shelley.
Shelley is like, well, you know how to use Zoom. Yeah, I do.
Expert, really?
Just don't see it yet.
Okay, in here?
Yep.
Okay, now I'm gonna go share screen. Now,
Show the entire screen.
oh, the entire screen.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Let's share. Allow me to click on that.
It's like a mirror image.
Share
Sean to their left.
Oh, yes.
it. And
And now I'm gonna go up here, but I have it already down here maybe.
Yeah.
So I can bloom.
Yeah, I'm just gonna see if it's sharing.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. Yep.
That's good to go.
Okay. So yeah, Maui Michiwajik translates to Gathering for Our Children, and we're located here in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And through Raising the Villages, Maui, Mijiwajik, we're weaving back together our lives from our infants to our elders and from across all cultures to deepen our respect and understanding for each other here in Mi'kma'ki, Unama'ki. So, question in here, how many people came and grew up in kind of a large extended family or had elders in the home? How many people grew up here with an extended family and elders in the home?
For sure.
So you know that mothers always had others, right? There was always an expert or someone to sort of say, here, give me the baby, or do those things. So we just want to kind of, I talked about it before, let's reimagine what this might look like in this day and age where we're living now, where we no longer have that same large extended family. We no longer have, for the most part, our elders or our aunts and uncles living with us. So if it takes a village to raise a child, what does it take to raise a village? I left this video in here, and I'm just going to leave it with you so you have it on file, and you can just watch it. It's 4 minutes, but it talks about the Gaelicness. So it's done over in Mavu, where you'll see elders in the community and infants and young families, and they're really strengthening the language as well as strengthening the sort of social connections that young families really deserve. And I think it doesn't matter if we're trying to retain the Acadian culture and the language or the Gaelic culture or anything Mi'kmaq, we can really see that this might be a way forward that really strengthens both the sort of social connections, but the actual ability for us to learn from those early years. So why the early years? I just like to say this, like inside each of our heads is like as many stars as you can see in the sky. There's 100 billion, and they create 1 trillion connections by the time you're 3 years old, which is kind of mind-blowing. But it's just this kind of thing that helps propel us forward for the rest of our life, how well that's really wired up. So just always to remember that this is kind of a magical story, not a kind of, oh my gosh, I missed the opportunity, because there's plasticity throughout life. You can have a stroke, you can recover, there's lots of things that can happen, but this early years is really one of the most important times. And as I said before, almost all the milestones happen before the child care door opens at 16 or 18 months. So that we need to be reminded that really come prenatal, how that mother's doing socially connected, physically, being, eating well, sleeping well, all those things happen inside her to the growing fetus, and then when it's born, that first 8-9 months before they start crawling is such a critical time that we now know scientifically actually forms so many of the neural connections for lifelong health. And I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health because I'm really focused on mental health as one of the determinants we're all looking for. How do we improve our mental health in our communities before it becomes too far gone? So as we know on this one from the Nobel economist, $1 in before that first year gives you $8 back, and then it's a decrease. So we know that as a CEO, this is where you want the investment period, right? In your communities, if you just want to sort of say this is the way we're going to change the dynamic in our community, this money in helps the governments understand that that's where you get the return. And then from a cost savings, this is the Center for Addiction and Mental Health numbers, but as I said, it's $51 billion a year that it costs us in society for adverse mental health. So the fallout of mental health in terms of lost productivity and reductions in health-related quality of life. So just for Richmond County, that would be $11.2 million a year lost. So if we turn that around and say, well, let's create 4 centers and they're 200,000 apiece, there's one here, there's one in St. Peter's, wherever they need to be, that's part of the community development plan. That's going to give you 800,000, you times that by 8, right? So it's 6.4 million, your investment is going to be 6.4 million every year, and you're saving 11 million every year. So this is why we can talk to Trevor Boudreau, we can talk to our MLAs and say, let's just talk about this. And let's just try this in Eastern Nova Scotia, because we've got leadership here and we've got people here that care about the quality of their communities, and we can be one of the places where you test this out. And I did talk to Trevor at the Bearhead room, or it was at the Shannon studio when they're announcing the community health grants, and he said, we need to sit down and talk. So between Keith Bain, Brian Comer, Trevor Boudreau, we got people that care deeply and have been invested in these communities for a long time, so it's how we just create an easy way for them to step in. So Trevor does want to talk about this. And so this, once again, just talking about a coordinated hub, what that might look like. Where do we start? We start prenatal. we just start with that support. That might be a drop-in. So I'm gonna show you a slide in a little bit. That's starting to happen now in Badak, that the prenatal is back in person. But then it's just seamless. And all our early intervention and all our speech and language lactation consultants come in because they're out there. You know, pediatricians, they work and live out of Antigonish, but it was all set up for them. There was nothing for them to put a day coming down here once every few months. And then they can meet and help screen and help our young families understand what's going on. And that's seamless, going right through. But, you know, so besides the services, it's just social connections. How do you meet newcomers? Where do you find it when everything changes and I don't have the same grouping because they're not having young children? That this may be the place. And then how do we add elders? Well, let's just make it welcoming. And maybe on the weekends it's for adolescents. And maybe on Thursday nights, pre-adolescents. And we don't have to have everything separated. But we create that one-stop shop again. And so here's the dream, just taking this region of Cape Breton and Unama'ki. This is the rural area. I'm not trying to separate CPRM out of the picture, but we have a unique need and opportunity right now. We have a need to have more services come to us, whether you're up in Bay St. Lawrence or over here in Ilmadan, and we have an opportunity to really kind of show how it can be done, because it's not that every community is ready to go with this, but if we have the conversations with what's going on in St. Peter's with their new hub, you know, with Claire Rankin, and we just have these conversations, maybe there's a way to kind of keep building that sort of ability, and then we make sure the money's in place. So this isn't a download on communities, this is an upload with the capacity to help support this. So, okay, why am I going? Okay. So here's the two things that are happening up in Bold, which is in, when you drive through Badak, I mentioned it before, the Kidston Landing, which was the tourist center, has been bought by the community to make into a hub. And now they have public health for the first time. They're calling it piloting. Well, when I was having children, and we were talking about it 2 years ago, public health did hold the prenatal, and it was held in the hospital. Now they're holding it in the community center, and they're inviting elders and everyone else in so it can create a community around the prenatal. And they're not just talking about having a baby, but what's it like for you? What other supports do you need? So, and the dream of this, of the person who's doing it, Stephanie McNeil, is that this continues right on, even after birth. So really trying to create what we're talking about and piloting it, and she's got the okay from public health to do this. And then up in Bay St. Lawrence, they've been really successful on creating a room there, and now they've brought up dental. Hygienist is going to go up, travel from Sydney all the way up there, and hearing and speech. So they're creating a hub that people can come to, and the services are starting to come there. So do they need help with the funding? Yes. But there's an interest in helping services come to us. So here's the mental health story that I told my daughters. So I've been a foster parent for a long time. And I couldn't understand why they were so triggered, right? They'd be jumping out of their skin. And when somebody would come in our house, they'd get really anxious because they were going to lose something. And one of the stories that I found out just in my life with my father and traveling on is these two parts of the brain. You have this huge brain, but inside it, there's this amygdala and hippocampus. And the amygdala is what makes you jump when you see a snake and you're afraid. And the hippocampus is when everything calms back down and you learn you're going to be okay. So these are natural things that are helpful to you to survive. And so, but for a baby, and this is my daughter talking to me, she's 7 years old, she says, but for a baby, it's not a snake and you can get away from it. For a baby, it's being hungry, being afraid, needing to eat, needing my diaper change. That's your snake and you can't get away from it. So it's how quickly the adults around it take that child and respond to it, puts the crying down, so the amygdala is what made you cry, like a porcupine, helps you get your needs met, and then you create new learning. Your hippocampus says everything's okay. So what's released when your amygdala fires is called cortisol. So it goes right down to the adrenal glands on top of your kidneys, and in an instant you got sweaty palms and you're going like this. So when I thought about the young people that came in our lives that were in foster care, they were like that a lot more because the switch was broken. Because the lack of ability for that mother to have support around her. Not a blame on the mother or the family. It's just a lack of support that created a switch that was more broken than not. Versus if you grew up with an intergenerational family, like I said, you're going to get through this. So overproduction of cortisol during that first 9 months shows up as ADHD, violence, depression, diabetes, malnutrition, cardiovascular disease, memory, immune system, drug and alcohol addiction. So we have a Department of Mental Health and Addictions in this province now. It's time for them to become aware that we can be doing more upstream. It doesn't mean you don't fall down in your life, but we'll create a more resilient path for our population by creating these intergenerational hubs. So that's just a little story about mental health way upstream. We know there's about 30% of children vulnerable when they enter school. That's a way to kind of use that marker to lower it down. And we know it's not just low income, it's the middle income. Now I'm going to talk about the early development instrument. And I know you've had people talking here about it, right? So the success story of the EDI, because I know Olivia Melnick's come in.
Yes.
So we've got an issue here, but it's okay. It can become a real tool for moving forward. So it measures 3 big areas: social, emotional, cognitive, and physical abilities. 107 questions by the primary teacher. So there's this one area in BC. In the late 1990s, Clyde Hertzman, who was an epidemiologist, went and spoke to the community and just had a community meeting like as if we're in the hall here. And one of the people in the meeting was the superintendent of schools. And she said, what? Like 1 in 3 children are vulnerable in this community, and we can do something about it? So she took the lead on this. And very soon after she started, she got it down as a team to below 10%. What's more important, for our rural areas where we're losing population, the population of babies went from 40 to over 100 in 14 years because it was more welcoming and connected. So each year, you're looking at 12%, 7%, 10%, 11%, 9% under 5 waves, 6 waves of the EDI. Provincial average stayed at 32%. And they did it because they connected the community. They connected it. And I know it's different because we're not a Revelstoke here, we get a St. Peter's here, we get Ayrshire, but we can imagine that we can connect the dots for our community and create a hub in each community that really starts to make everything flow right from the beginning of life. So, takeaways, why don't we expand that focus, include the early years, focus on the early development instrument as a planning tool, not just a kind of, oh my gosh, we're in trouble thing. And then we can create those multiple layers of services, programs, and support for families. And do it as a region. Like our families don't see the boundaries between Inverness County or Port Hawkesbury or here. If we could have these centers everywhere. Now, the Raising the Villages has worked with ASI on the policy brief I talked to you about. That's going to all the premiers. It talks about these models as where pilots need to become. We're partners support with the Richmond County Collaborative Network. We held a workshop December 5th in Port Hawkesbury. It included a number of people from Richmond County. We're really celebrating the idea that this can happen. There's another one on food security next week that we're part of Raising the Villages. Once again, if we have a hub, it's really easy to do more of this stuff, and we are seeing more of these hub models, but let's just extend it to this. And we're gonna have an infographic going. I want to expand the network. Really, that's the game right now. That's it, done.
Okay.
And I know it's 15 minutes, I might have been over tonight.
No, I think you're okay, yeah.
I didn't have my stopwatch going.
That's all right, no, it's great information. Anybody have any questions for Jim?
It's okay if there's no questions. It's just, I really hear in the way that I think through, you already have the Richmond County Coalition, and Shannon, so we've met with them and we're part of that. So once again, maybe we can move that network and include Inverness County. I'm not trying to change anything, but if we had one that was maybe just focused on the early years periodically, and we could really start to get the attention of our MLAs like Trevor, who would be a real supporter of this. And he said, you know, he's willing to do this. And we have an opportunity in Cape Breton to be one of the models like the pre-primary was, if you remember in 2006, 7, 8, when Rodney was the premier.
Yeah.
And they just piloted it in 20 communities.
Right.
Then they pulled back and then they came in universally. And I think we need to do this safely so that provinces don't get freaked out. But also that we try some investment outside of more doctors and more healthcare workers, which I think are important. We could also do a piece of this.
Yeah, certainly the EDI has been a topic of conversation around this table more than once, and I think generally we've tried to express our support as a council for these, you know, for the early years and specifically around literacy for sure, right? So, yeah, no, this is great information. I'm glad to hear that you're having those conversations with the folks in St. Peters about the new hub that they're proposing there as well, so.
Yeah, and just connecting the dots, and I think we'll go further this year in hosting some community conversations, maybe like in St. Peters or wherever there's an
Yeah.
interest. And once again, we're just hosting the conversation of what's going on, what we would like to see more of. And I think this intergenerational idea of a space that really does support us and is funded with the province, because we already have tons of spaces, it's just how we organize them. And this way we can just say, let's go for 5 years. We don't have to overburden anyone, but I think each one of our communities deserves an opportunity to take a chance on this. So look, thank you very much. Once again, thank you for your support. And this is a long road back to community sometimes, that we lost it without really noticing how much we lost. So I'm really appreciative of Richmond County's always been one of my favorite places to come. It's just coming. Besides it being beautiful, I think we share some values on this island, and very strong values about a sense of place and
I think
community.
you're right,
So, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay,
For 1 second, back for your notice.
okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jim. Bye-bye. Okay, so we're going to move through our agenda. So the next item is the notice to be given, and this is for information purposes, regarding the Comfort Center and Emergency Shelter Policy. On April 24th, 2023, at regular council, a motion is going to be made to adopt the Comfort Center and Emergency Shelter Policy. The purpose of the policy is to outline the overview of procedures and responsibilities regarding the activation of one or more of the centers or shelters to ensure residents have adequate access to temporary sheltering following an emergency. So that's notice to be given at this stage, and we'll move on to the next item unless councillors have any questions on that. No? Okay, next item is the review of the Warden's Council report. And again, this is something I've just started to provide for information purposes. Are there any questions on that report?
Did you sleep or no?
Yeah, no, that was a long one, sorry.
I'm always tired when I read it. I feel like there was one. It was something, but I'll ask you again. I just was.
Sure.
I didn't write it up here.
Okay. Okay, and so if there's no questions on the council report, I'll move on to the next item, which is the Deputy Warden. Sampson has a discussion he wanted to put forward on fire services. So over to you, Deputy Warden.
So this is just to get the conversation started, and the CAO can possibly add a little bit to get a little bit more information today. There was a terms of reference drafted in 2021, I believe that was when Mr. Hershey was doing that job probably. As per the information I sent out, the committee, it seems that the structure now doesn't seem to be making a whole lot of headway. So it was looking at the discussion of whether we should be changing something going forward, especially considering the fact if we want to consider a single rate system going forward, there's going to be a lot of work to do, and we need to be focused on more than one item every meeting, basically. So, you heard some more information today, did you not see it?
I did, Madam Chair, through you to the councillors, Deputy Warden. There's a number of ways, like anything, to skin the cat there. You can, I reached out to our friends at Municipal Affairs, who also reached out to the Provincial Fire Marshal's office, just as we were discussing fire committees and expanded committees. If we had accepted terms of reference, where's the best place if we want to change that, if we want to refocus a committee in one area and have other people attend a different meeting. We can strike new committees with new terms of reference if you so wish. It's nice and clean. Council can do that. We also can realign the committees that are currently in place and redefine those committees, because you now have a committee since, well, Steve's been here and with you guys, where it is just the fire chiefs. And I believe both councillors are at the fire chiefs meeting as well, are you not?
No.
No,
That's just the fire chiefs
I
and
think that was
Steve?
something he just kind of organized to try and see what headway could be made, and I'm all for that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
sometimes they may be more open to discussing things without us in the room, right?
Right. But absolutely, it was highly supported at the provincial fire marshal's office that you have a committee that is nothing but your volunteer fire departments, your counselors, and your fire services coordinator. And they said whichever way you want to go about doing that, whether it is requesting the change in the terms of reference from that committee, or just leaving that committee, it's called abandoning that committee and striking new ones with new terms of reference. Those options are open to us, if you wish to go that way. Because, you know, honestly, it took us a while, both Steve and I, to get our heads around how these committees, why there were so many people at some of these committees. And for fire services, it truly should be your fire departments and the counselors.
Well, part of it is though that there's a lot of, like what I sent an email, there's a lot of these people that are listed that have never shown up anyway.
Right.
Like to my knowledge, we've never had a representative from the RCMP or paramedic or anything like that. You know, those are emergency services and that there's a separate, but as far as the fire services and dealing with these issues, I mean, if on a specific basis, somebody needs to be called in for a specific issue, that might work well, but as a member of the committee, it never made any sense to me, although they say most of them have never shown up.
Right.
Straight area mutual aid, I mean, they have their own meetings. There's mutual aid meetings, so there's really no purpose of having a separate person from mutual aid come into this.
If it's all right with you, I'm just gonna make like a quick comment on it, and I guess, you know, part of my concern has been around, related to, you know, is there some duplication happening right now? Because we at first only had fire services, and now we have a fire chiefs committee. And I feel like sometimes those committees maybe are, like, I feel like there's either a duplication of mandate here or sometimes maybe even of effort. So that's something I'd like to kind of just offer for consideration. Councillor Melanie, I think Councillor Digdon, did you put your hand up, Councillor Digdon, to say something?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a couple steps that definitely have to be made. One is we didn't adopt the terms of reference. So whether we start fresh or we just look at adopting a terms of reference would be probably one of our starting points that we have to do. Second to Deputy Warden's comment, you know, I do agree that moving forward, there's many names on that list that we could probably alter or fix, I guess, for the Fire Services Committee. You know, it is for Richmond County, it is for fire chiefs. So I think maybe through Steve, through them, that I don't know if we wanna go that way or how we wanna approach it. That can be a discussion, you know, at another time, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Digdon. Councillor Melanie?
So I have like questions, like comments, if that's okay?
Of course.
So, this fire chiefs committee, where did that come from?
It's a committee that Steve struck when he became our new emergency management coordinator to talk specifically with the chiefs of the fire department. So it's not a committee of council. Would be more similar to, well, I hate to compare it to recreation, but you remember recreation committee was struck as a committee by a staff person. Councilors opted to go on that committee, but it's not a committee of council, right? So it's a committee that Steve established in order to help him do his job, I believe. Yeah.
And their role is to?
And it's strictly about fire services and how things are going with the fire departments and how Steve can better assist them. I think it was more than anything, it was strictly just our fire departments with him and the fire chiefs to try and help Steve get his feet under him here in Richmond.
So it would seem to me that there is again, never having attended either of these meetings, I mean, it certainly sounds to me like if you think about what the Fire Protection Services Steering Committee is supposed to do, it sounds an awful lot like what this other committee that was created by Steve is doing. But they have no, I'll use the term weight, just because anything that they would propose would come through Steve to council versus the Fire Protection Services Steering Committee, which has a direct link to council, right? There's no like
Correct.
middle section.
Yep.
So I would just wonder why that, if that subcommittee was created because there were people, I shouldn't say people, I'm gonna say positions, cause I feel like sometimes things are driven by the people, not the position. So are there positions on that list that don't belong or should be there depending on what the purpose is, right? So, you know, I think it's been recommended, right, that, you know, that departments within our county should be included on this, in this committee, and really just the departments. Again, like excluding the folks like, you know, mutual aid or EHS or, you know, those ex officio members, because that would start to sound more like the committee that Steve has created. And certainly if we're looking to make changes there that look like a county-wide approach to fire protection, the groups that have the decision-making abilities, for lack of a better word, right, in terms of, you know, like a single levy or a, you know, a single buying place for large equipment or whatever, where that is the fire departments within the county, right? Because I mean, to that point, you know, we don't include, Port Hawkesbury provides fire protection for us to Point Tupper, and
Correct.
they're not included.
Exactly.
So I do think there's a lot to think about there, but I think we just need to think about like what's the purpose of this committee? What are we looking for them to do? And then match the group of people that should be making those decisions to the
The
committee.
positions.
The group of positions, yes.
So if I may, and I don't know if, I can't speak for Steve, so I'm not even gonna try. So, but I will say that I think Steve has a great rapport with all the fire chiefs, and they tend to value his opinion because of where he's been, as opposed to sitting in front of me and, you know, deputy warden, not that they don't value our opinion, however, they take his word as, you know, as solid. So, I like the fact that they do meet. What I think has to happen is the discussion from that meeting, whether it be via notes or via whatever, has to then trickle over to the Fire Services Committee, so that we can review it there and then bring it to council. Or we can say, no, we can't do that, yes, we can do that, yes, we'll bring that to council. So I think that's where the lapse is that it, you know, it goes from the fire committee that Steve has created, which is great, but it hasn't rolled over into the Fire Services Committee. So it's kind of a complete separate, when we get there, it's like, well, we discussed that 2 weeks ago, or we discussed that a month ago, why are we bringing it up again? And I think that's where there's a breakdown in the communication.
But if they were one, then there'd be no breakdown.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
I guess that's what I'm saying, like, if they were one, I'm not saying get rid of the one that Steve struck, I'm saying,
Yep.
what if the one that Steve struck
Is the fire service.
became the
Yeah.
Fire Services Committee?
Right.
Right, and, you know,
and I'm
Yeah,
not
'cause-
sure if, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think, CEO, what you mentioned earlier, I think this Chiefs Committee, Fire Chief Committee, that Steve was more of an introduction when Steve got on board to say, I'm gonna introduce myself to all these fire chiefs.
That's what I was thinking, I don't know.
And, right,
They decided to keep it going, just
Well,
as a
I'm
support
not-
network.
I can't
probably.
speak for him the same as you said, I'm
Right.
not sure if it was meant to be long-term, or if it was meant to be
Yeah.
just for him to be able to get to know
Right.
people and get a discussion
And
started.
the issues.
And we'd have to defer to Steve on that.
So I think that's a great point, Deputy Warden. I'm thinking, could we ask you to confer with Steve? And maybe ask Steve to confer with his fire department committee, chiefs committee,
Sure.
to see, you know, if could we get this all done in one shot? Because it makes very little sense to me to be duplicating effort between staff, counselors, fire chiefs. I mean, these
Not
are
only that,
volunteers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not comfortable with asking them to show up to two separate committees,
I know.
because they have there's mutual aid meetings, there's
Yeah.
regular
And there's a
department
cost
meetings.
involved in that.
There's
Yeah.
Well, and to Deputy Warden's, comment, we actually lost one or two fire chiefs from attending the Fire Services Committee only because it was like, you know what, this is a waste of time, we talked about this last month.
It's like
Or
watching
it's-
Coronation Street, you
yeah.
can pick it up a year later,
Yeah.
and very little has changed.
Yeah.
Within a few minutes.
Deputy Morton, your
Not that I
taste
don't
in
enjoy
television
Coronation
shows
Street.
notwithstanding.
Notwithstanding the Coronation
That's
Street comment, I guess what I would say to that is, you know, like, in your brief to us and then in your introduction, you know, you did talk about how, you know, sometimes like a topic can kind of take over the conversation and kind of run the whole meeting. I mean, that may be where, you know, the chair of the committee just needs to create more structure to their agenda and just not allow something that's an old business to continue to take precedence. Time, you know, like, I think that's something, CAO, that maybe we could provide a little, like, assistance to the chair, just to help, like, with the idea of timed events, because part of, you know, we could spend all of our meetings repeating the same thing over and over, but our warden won't allow that.
Yeah, it's
Like,
not
she's
on-
getting ready to cut us off
It'll
soon.
be added to the agenda, I can promise you that.
But then it shouldn't be, because it's been just like, you know,
And Madam Warden, if I may add, the other part of this is once the fire services is handled, all these other folks that are outside this one will still be part of our emergency management planning and committees going forward, because that's a much wider spectrum. But when we wanna just talk about fire services within Richmond County, we need the committee that's nothing but the fire departments, our 2 counselors, and our fire services coordinator. And they need to have that time by themselves, so they can work on that. But once we go to emergency management, that's when all these other folks are invited, and they're welcomed at the table, and the list will be much larger than what's in front of you now as we grow that emergency management portfolio, so.
So my suggestion, I guess, at this point is, could we maybe put a pause on the fire services committee meetings for now? Ask Steve to, through you, Troy, to confer with the fire chiefs. My concern is, I think we would have as a council a clear understanding of what some of the things we need as outcomes from this group, but I would also wanna make sure we understand what they need as well. And maybe that becomes kind of the information that could come back to council, and then we could decide on a way to proceed.
I think what you may find is, when Steve recommends that, the chiefs, you know, on this committee that Steve has started, is more or less looking forward to that situation, because like you said, right? You know, they're having these meetings, and they're going to a fire services committee meeting, and they're saying, well, you know, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and then the topic goes back to the topic that's always on the table, and then the fire chiefs are like, here we go again, right? So I think a lot of the fire chiefs that Steve is working with now on his committee would welcome this situation, in my opinion.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, and you're right, in relation to that, you know, just put perspective is, you know, as a fire service committee, we brought back and forth to council the dry hydrant policy.
Right.
The fire chiefs agreed on it, and then unfortunately, and I don't know that we wanna let the fire services committee sit too far on the side, cause we only meet once every quarter anyway, so.
Oh, well, then maybe there's not a need to, so I was just thinking
There was
before
a
we
meeting
continue.
scheduled for May, I believe, right?
For May, I believe, yeah.
Okay.
So, and the only reason I say that is because that's what happened in the past, we had given Steve the luxury of meeting with everybody and we held back. And then when we went back, then nobody was happy with the dry hydrant policy anymore, and they were the ones who agreed with us to begin with, so it was, you know, again, I agree that we should probably let Steve have a discussion, I just don't think we should sit back too long.
Okay, Councilor.
and I guess, you know, as you look at the mandate and the committee goals, like, I think that that's something as well, like CAO, I'd love to see that you and Steve would look at, you know, some of these things are talking about, you know, providing forums for individual organizations to be heard and considered, like guest speakers and all that, and I think, you know, if those guest speakers are in relation to, like, you wanna explore the idea of a single rate and you want someone to talk to you from a municipality that does it, that's a guest speaker, but like talking about fire safety or whatever is not necessarily a place for this. Like, this is a committee that needs to help us as a council make appropriate decisions to support them in the important work that they do.
And to really take that fire, you know, that fire
Yes.
those fire recommendations.
And go through them.
Hammer them
And
out.
start to
Yes.
hammer them out, because this was the whole purpose.
And that's what we've sat in the room before and said, listen, if suggestions don't come from this room, don't wanna hear complaints when you don't like the outcome. Because they're much better off coming from this room, from people who know, and I don't mean this room, I mean the fire services
Yes,
committee
yes.
room, and being brought to council.
Then council making the decision without going through them first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was,
Just makes no sense.
So,
Okay, so,
We can take that
could we
away.
leave that with you?
Sure.
I'm not sure that we need a motion to that effect, it's more just a,
I can take that
discussion.
direction.
Yeah, perfect.
Sure.
All right, thank you, Deputy Warden. Are there any other final comments on that matter? Okay, so hearing none, I'm going to move us on to the CAO regarding our 2023-24 budget planning discussion.
So you guys all get this little document on your desk. And again, it's not to go through it tonight, this was a takeaway for you guys, just as we're doing our internal, budget stuff now, once we get to you guys in May, if there's, upon reviewing this, if there's things that you want us to explore, and get numbers on for you going forward, give it to us in April as best you can, so that we have time to research and go out and find costs for things, so when we're ready with you guys in May. You're gonna see I color-coded it to our strategic plan refresh. I like tying any budget that I'm involved with back to the strategic plan. I heard that from you folks as well when you were running me through my paces to come here. And it's just natural. You have this plan in place. It's goals-based budgeting. And then that way, this reminds us, it keeps it fresh. This is our touch point with the residents we serve. And it gives a starting point as we start building the budgets. And it helps remind us that these were things that were discussed, and we can plan for this year and the subsequent year. So you're gonna see arrows with nothing next to them. It's meant for you to write it in so that when we get to our budget discussions, we can make sure that we're hitting those marks. All right, so
Okay,
it's just a primer document as we get ready for our budget and just to try and align it back to our strat plan.
CAO, do you have a deadline when you'd like to hit, like, you know, cause when are you guys gonna start kind of in earnest in your budgeting, like how long?
It was gonna be this week, but with two of my directors off sick and one on vacation, I don't know if that's gonna happen this week. The cold seems to be just
Yeah.
going through this building like crazy. It may be next week, but yeah, we're full steam at this point right now. Every department's building budgets.
Okay, so this week we should try to give some feedback to you,
If
if
you
you have
could,
anything that you wanna
anytime.
add or whatever, okay.
By all means,
Yeah.
if you have things like right now, I'm trying to build like an IT budget
Yeah.
as well for you guys to consider. So those things, as I can feed them into Jason, it just makes May that much cleaner.
okay. You know, see at the back, you've got a list of questions. One of them, is there an appetite for a grant specialist, community liaison?
That would be called a dream.
That would be called the dream, but I think if we're gonna be leveraging funds,
PRCMP, yeah, or
we're gonna wanna at least understand what the cost is around something like
Yep.
that. I know we've discussed in the past and, you know, just in our check-ins about an IT and communications person.
Yep.
Is that kind of part of this item on IT that you've got listed here?
It is, but there's a whole lot of other things that came up with our insurance this year as well, that we have some major infrastructure we gotta do on the IT side of things as well, just on
Yes.
IT security and equipment rollover and stuff like that. So, yeah, we definitely want an IT person totally separate from the grant one.
Okay,
And the IT one, if we can find one that is willing to move here and fits all the things, there are other municipalities or groups that have expressed interest in possibly cost sharing that.
Oh.
If they can make use of that service as well.
great.
So that's wonderful. And one of them is right in our area, so that'd be fantastic.
That's really good.
now looking at that with the IT, is it, are we looking for an employee for
Yes.
IT, or are we
Yes.
looking something that we can, I guess,
We're thinking of subcontract that
yeah,
out.
And again, talking with that other partner, they've tried people from Sydney, Truro, and Halifax looking after theirs, and that hasn't worked yet either. And with us, and with it's a core service of any organization now, IT security and maintenance of our equipment. Not having somebody under this roof and responsive to what we need, is leaving us at risk. And nobody can do this off the side of their desk. You need somebody that is their job, to maintain the integrity of our systems, our infrastructure. Then we can look at digitizing our files, we can branch that into asset management, we can build onto the GIS archives as well. Once you commit to this investment, there's lots and we're gonna be playing catch up with a lot of people, because most people have the IT person in-house already. The thought that we could possibly cost share it just makes it that much more attractive. But I don't see us sharing that person for the first year at all, really, with all the stuff that we need to do internally ourselves.
And I will say, in my experience, Councillor Digdon, to your point, I know sometimes offering that out on a contracted basis as, to a consulting company or whatever, when you don't require that full-time attention, that you can save you some money, certainly. I think we would not want to be entertaining a consultant's numbers if we require the kind of full-time attention you're talking about, because it would be a lot more expensive. So,
And in openness as well, Madam Chair, through the council, I did talk to our current provider, who is looking to possibly retire in the next couple of years. So that he would love the opportunity for us to hire somebody and bring them on, instead of just dropping the mic and here it is and away you go. So if we had somebody hired for a couple of years, then this person can retire and we have somebody in that position that knows the lay of the land and that has already started putting their own hands on it, so.
okay, and I mean, certainly a more full discussion we can have at budget time as well. One question I guess that I had is, could we get, I know last year we did sort of I think it was a half day or a couple of hours on the grants and contributions, and then we did like a full day, and then I think maybe one follow-up session. I don't know about you councillors, but
It was so much better.
it was so much better than trying to schedule it in 2-hour increments over, so if we could get those in the calendar sooner rather than later.
Can I email you guys tomorrow the tentative dates?
Yes,
in
please.
May, because he has them penciled off, and he is mirroring exactly what he did last year.
Great.
I believe it's a 3-day thing, finishing with a full day on a Friday.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And because his feedback as well is that worked really well,
Yeah,
and that's what we were aiming to emulate,
great.
or duplicate, sorry.
That's fantastic. I know how quickly our calendars
Schedule
get
is just full.
booked up.
Yeah. Conferences and that are starting
You know
again,
it. You know
and away
it.
we go.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for Troy on the budget planning discussion? All right, so hearing none, we'll move us on to our community acknowledgements, and I know Councillor Digdon has one that he wants to mention, but I'm gonna kick things off with our usual, which is the Volunteer of the Month for March 2023. Darren McRae and Henry Sampson were our volunteers for March. They've worked together on many initiatives for the Barishwa Trail Association and have dedicated countless hours to various projects, from organizing heavy equipment resources to repairing an abandoned rail corridor, which has had a significant impact on shaping the trail into the Richmond County Rail Trail, a multi-use trail that many Richmond County residents have come to love. Both Darren and Henry can be found on the trail almost daily, fixing and filling potholes and keeping the trail groomed for users to enjoy. The combined time and effort of Darren and Henry is showcased in the well-maintained trail that's available for everyone to access, and if you haven't taken advantage of it, I definitely highly recommend it. So please, I know all council will join us in recognizing the hard work, dedication, and commitment that they have provided to their community. So congratulations, and thanks to Darren and Henry for the work they do. So, Councillor Digdon?
Yeah, so I guess, this one's a little different for me, because usually I'm on the side of giving criticism as opposed to giving compliments. So this one's kind of nice actually. For the past weekend, the Freddie McNeil Memorial was held out at the Richmond Arena. It ran from Wednesday right up until Saturday night. I think 10 o'clock was the final game, but our Zamboni broke down in the middle of operations on Friday. I believe it was Friday night, right around 9 o'clock, actually right around 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I have to, I give credit where credit is due, and I gotta give it to staff. They called Delbert Matthews, to come out at 10 o'clock at night, and at 10:30 he was sitting at the rink working on the Zamboni. Sean Woodrow was refereeing and watching games, and once he finished refereeing and I guess whatever, ended up in the Zamboni room along with the arena staff, myself, and Rate of Recreation, Ronaldo was there holding the flashlight while the guys were working on the Zamboni to get it going. So they got it up and running, and great job, and a good call out to the staff for, like anybody else, you can call them at 10 o'clock, it doesn't mean they gotta show up. So, and if they wouldn't have, we would have been down and out without a Zamboni, and a whole lot of work. In saying that, I guess for recognition, I'd like to, Leon Burke, Joan Burke, and Adam Marchand are three of the, people that really put a lot of time and effort into the Freddie McNeil tournament. This year it was probably, I think, the largest one ever held. Had 4 women's teams, and it was a great event all around. It's still called the Gentlemen's Hockey Tournament. I'm not sure why, because there's not a whole lot of gentlemen's play that goes on, but
And there are some ladies teams who also played.
and there were 4 ladies teams, and great turnout. Thank you to everybody who sponsored, everybody who donated and committed their time and effort, but definitely to the staff, a huge thank you for saving the day.
Yeah, awesome, well said, Councillor Dayton.
We'll pass that along.
Yes, please do. Any other comments on that? I know it was a huge weekend in Richmond County, you could feel it everywhere, even in my household, that I saw a few hockey players visiting, my husband and I, so it was great, we love seeing them. So,
Just have a couple of just acknowledgements, I guess, as well. Lots of stuff going on in Lewisdale, both in the Lennox Passage out at the rink, but also the parish in Lewisdale did a reenactment of the Way of the Cross on Friday. I was part of that, it was amazing. And Saturday, they had a great event put on by the Ladies Auxiliary, the fire department, of course, helping them. And they had over 250 kids, they figured, that did the Easter egg hunt and a whole bunch of other activities, and yeah, so a Good Friday meal, so lots of things happening, I think, in the communities. I will say it's super nice to see things coming back to normal after COVID, and just, kudos to the huge amount of volunteer hours that go into all of those things, so.
well said. Definitely. And I probably should have opened this meeting by saying a belated Happy Easter, I don't think we did that. But it was a wonderful weekend, for sure. Sean, Councillor Sean?
So I would like to congratulate Charmaine Boudreau. Charmaine's from Marishad in my district, and she received a Lifelong Learner Award from Cape Breton South, Recruit for Health. The award is given to a healthcare professional who is continuously looking to enhance and broaden their skills. So yeah, just want to congratulate Charmaine. She is an RN and a valuable part of the team at the Straight Richmond Emergency Department.
Absolutely.
Right? So just want to congratulate Charmaine and thank her for her commitment and devotion to healthcare in our area.
Yeah. Well said, and I believe there are a few additional Richmond County
Yeah.
award winners, and so congratulations to
I
all of
think,
them. I don't know that they're all announced, so we may still be waiting for a couple, so I'm gonna leave it there.
I just wanted to, I seen there were other ones, but I just wanted to say Charmaine stuck out because of my district, right? But
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Also,
great.
I do want to follow up on Councillor Digdon, when it comes to staff. I also want to thank staff for their presence and their help during our autism acceptance flag raising ceremony. It was great to see staff out there and helping out. It was also great to see members of the public, the members of the public, Hearts of Hogmanay is always.
Class from up on the hill here, it was great.
Yeah, you stole my thunder there because, Hearts of Hogmanay, the staff and the members are always here, so that's great to see them. And, je veux aussi remercier Madame Nicole Savory et les membres de l'École Beauport d'avoir marché ici avec les élèves de l'École Beauport. Ça m'a donné grand plaisir de voir les étudiants ici avec nous autres. So, in translation, just wanted to thank Madame Nicole Sampson Savory and her staff that walked down here with, those young kids. It was great to see them here with us. So it's-
Especially because it was.
It was cold. and
C'était
windy.
très froid.
So I just wanna.
Her French lessons are working
The
well.
French lessons are paying off.
But yeah, no, it was great to see those young kids and people from Hearts on the Dam and staff, helping out, so it was great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So thank you, yeah.
Well said, thank you, Councillor Sean Sampson. Okay, are there any other acknowledgements? It's obviously been a busy month. All right, so hearing that, I'm gonna move us on then, to the next item on our agenda, which is, correspondence action required. And before we jump into that, I do note that we have several grant requests on the correspondence. So two of them are specifically have come through our grant requesting program.
Yep.
However, we are in a new fiscal year, so I just want to kind of put it out there for council that I think at this point our options would be to review those now, approve or deny, but if we have consensus to set aside at least a sufficient amount to cover those in our budgeting process at this point, or we could just defer them to budget. So I don't know how time sensitive either one of them are, although one is a startup, so I would hesitate to defer that too much for sure. I don't know, councillors, would you prefer to discuss these now, make a decision, thinking that we are going to continue the granting program? I'll just check in maybe with you, Deputy Warden.
Yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately it will depend on what we decide there. I'm fine with approving these, assuming, like, you know, assuming that the budget is similar or there is funding available.
Okay.
I don't know if, I had no thoughts on anything changing on that this year.
Okay.
I think it's been working reasonably well.
Yes, yeah, I would agree, yeah.
I feel the same, I feel like,
Okay.
you know, we didn't hold off last year, I feel like we're probably gonna be in a similar place with those numbers.
Okay, great. Councillor Sean Sampson?
Yeah, totally in agreement that hopefully we can keep, that grant funding going, like in the past, so, yeah.
Okay.
No problems.
Councillor Digdon?
Do we have any funding left in our, grant?
It's over,
Yeah, budget years old.
reset.
The budget year.
Budget year's reset already,
Yeah.
so, yeah, like the others, I have no problem reviewing it, I would hate to give false hope to somebody thinking that we approved it tonight or, you know, accepted it, instead of waiting until we got the numbers from Jason and then.
Yeah, so what I'm
There
looking,
would be no false hope, we would be stuck to it, it would need to
Right.
be part of our budget.
So.
Right, so we can't make it part of our budget if we don't know we have it in the budget to make it part of.
but what
And
I'm,
we'd have to make it.
yeah, so that the option
We did
is
it last year.
to approve now if we have consensus to set aside at least a sufficient amount to cover these specific requests tonight. So like last year, we had a pot this big. Even if we decide this year, our pot's this big, we will have to make sure that it's gonna at least cover these in order for us to be able to approve them this evening. And so that's the consensus I was looking for, and I know that would certainly be my assumption is that we, if we approve both of these this evening, I think it's $5,500 worth of grants. I'm feeling that.
Madam Chair, if I may, that was gonna be my primer for you guys, seeing that our CFO could not make it this evening, was anything you decide tonight is just in your budget in pen, not in pencil,
That's right.
right? Because you are hardwiring it into your budget if you approve it tonight.
Exactly. So would you be okay with that approach?
I'm okay with the approach, I feel that we should, defer some of these items to budget to find out that we're not.
So we're only talking about the two grant requests, the
A and B.
first two,
And-
because any
The
remainders
third one is not a grant.
did not come through a grant request program.
Okay.
And would we need consensus to proceed in that way, or,
I'm good with that.
yeah,
We're prepared to support that.
okay.
And I
Are
believe you
prepared
did
to
it last
support
year
that?
with
We
your
did it last
CFO.
year.
And that's what he told me, he said
Okay.
you guys did some things before budget as well. It's just that builds your starting point.
Yeah.
Because they're already allocated.
Hadn't we already deferred stuff to the budget?
We have, but they haven't been grant requests. This is the grant application form that's been filled
Okay, I
out.
thought 2 weeks ago we had a grant request, that's the only reason I,
We approved it 2 weeks ago, it was the last of our budget.
okay,
Yeah, it was on last year's budget.
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, all right, well then we'll proceed. So, the first one is via a memo from the CFO Jason Martell regarding the Lordways Acadian Heritage Society grant request. So this came through type 2 startup activity grant, and the request is for $500. I think this is the first one of this kind that we've seen at the council table since we started, so, Deputy Warden, you wanna speak with us?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, if we were to, assuming we were to look at setting the grant funding in a similar way with a certain amount of it set aside per district, I'd be fine with the 500 coming from the district fund towards this rather than out of the general fund. I have no problem with that.
Okay, great,
Awesome.
okay,
Look at the deputy warden getting a head start
Hey.
next year, so.
Allow me to second that if any of you. Before he changes his mind.
okay, so we'd be looking for, and sorry, is there any additional discussion, or could we prepare a motion? I guess the motion would be that the committee recommend to council that the Lordways Acadian Heritage Society grant request for type 2 startup activity grant funds in the amount of $500 for the purpose of supporting the cost of equipment and supplies be approved and allocated as follows, would be $500 from the District 5 grant fund.
Excellent. It's great to see.
Okay, so who would like to make that
I'll
motion?
make that.
Okay, Deputy Warden will make that motion,
I'll second
and
that.
you will second that. Thank you, Councillor Sampson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried.
So the next item, I'm gonna recuse myself from this because
Oh, you've got a,
my handwriting is in here more than once.
okay. Oh, man. I did not recognize
A few
it.
items submitted on that, so.
Sure thing, thank you, Deputy Warden. So the Deputy Warden has declared a conflict and has stepped away from the table. So this next item comes in the form again of a memo from Jason Martell, our CFO, regarding the St. Peters Grand River Loch Lomond Pastoral Charge grant request for Type 4 Regional Health General Grant Funds in the amount of $5,000. So just, I guess I wanted to provide a little bit of background on this because Sherry Backerdax, the applicant on behalf of the pastoral charge, has provided some background information, including that that the United Church itself is providing about $13,500 towards the overall cost, which I think is a significant development. Typically we have, that hasn't always been the case in some of our, with some of our other applications from local churches. So I did want to just mention that. And then I just open for discussion from council on this one. Any red flags, concerns, support?
Okay, so my understanding, and correct me if I read or didn't read it correctly, the building is actually.
So is the property that they're, do they own the property? Remind me. No, my understanding is they do not, but CEO, did you?
It says it's under the auspices of the United Churches.
But that currently aligns with the change we have made to our policy to enable investment on crown property in particular, we have been thinking in the past. Yes, but wasn't the change, because I think I looked at it recently, was that there had to be a lease. You either needed to own the property or a lease in place. I'm pretty confident that that's what I read, authority or something, wasn't it? Has change to say that if it was, and the same likewise with the waterfront development in Pettit McGraw, and I think that was, it was changed to say you either needed to be, you needed to own it or lease it. Change in November of 21.
Yes, that is correct, yeah. The monument park had to be leased. So the trustees of St. Peter's United Church being the successors of the trustees of the congregation of St. Peter's, being the owner of the lands described.
So the congregation owns the
So that's right from the deeds, registry of deeds.
okay.
And the purpose of the deed is to confirm the ownership of the property by the trustees of St. Peter's United Church.
Okay, so then they do own the property.
It looks like they do.
Okay, alright, that's.
So they satisfy that.
Yes, okay, so that must be why they satisfy that requirement if they own that property. Okay. So I guess my thought to this, you know, like, in looking through their application, I mean, there are a lot of community events that take place in this location. Notwithstanding the fact that many of them are county related. I also think, you know, they have a good deal of other funding partners, which is also helpful. So they've done their due diligence to try to get what they can get out of it. Like I would see this coming out of the regional fund. I think it's too big for a district fund. And I don't feel like it serves multiple districts. I feel like, you know, the main district it would probably sit in would be the Wardens, and again, I don't feel it's necessarily fair for it to come from there. So at first blush, I would say I would support it. I don't know if 5,000 is my number, but I'm open to others' opinions.
Yeah, I think it tends to be a location that we use for informing the public or engaging with the public when we're in eastern Richmond County, because the Lions Hall is often just too big and also booked steady, and the fire hall no longer does community bookings, and the Bonnie Brain tends to be a little bit too small. So it's kind of got that middle of the road size. So I think that's why we see so many of the
And we use
county.
recreation.
Recreation uses it, it's used for elections.
Yeah. And, okay, so thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson, for your comments. Maybe I'll just ask Councillor Sean Sampson if you have any comments.
Pretty much in the same agreement as Councillor Melanie. You know, it's a big ask, and you know, I wouldn't want it to come strictly from your district fund. We wouldn't want that to happen. Although we could take it from every new ordinance and conflict of interest. So we would want it on this one, or not. But no, like Councillor Melanie said, in all seriousness, I mean, I would look at half for sure from our regional fund, 2,500 or 3,000, out of the 5. And go in that range, see where it goes.
Okay. Councillor Digdon, did you have any thoughts on this one?
No, I would support the same. I definitely don't believe it should, the weight of that amount should fall into one district.
the Facility Innovation Fund, 7,500.
Those are both, programs of the United Church.
Okay, so it's looking like, you know, their project they're expecting is about 100,000. If you start to add up their numbers, like they're moving close to that $100,000 piece, and rightfully they should be putting some money in themselves. So I would say 3,000 is the number I would go with. So I will make a motion that we approve the grant request in the amount of 3,000 coming from the general fund.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson, and, could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Digdon. And, you know, I'll say I would support that approach. I am a little nervous of large asks this early in the year. But I also, you know, recognize that this is a big project that we're looking at, so, I'll say thank you now for your support on that project, and, any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. And we'll welcome Councillor Deputy Warden back to the table. And the next item on the agenda is a letter from Jim Cavanaugh regarding the Strait Area Mutual Aid Association. They have sent in a request for funding for equipment in the amount of $5,000. Now this has not come through a grant, it's a grant application as such. It's just a simple straight request. So our options here would be potentially to refer this to budget, or, you know, my feeling is that we have a process in place for requests for grants, that we should stick to it whenever possible. I think that makes life easier for the CFO, for all of us, but also keeps us all accountable. It's not just about ease, it keeps us all accountable to the process. So we could do one or the other, or both, whichever. So, Deputy Warden?
Well, the only thing my concern would be on this is, yeah, I think it's a collective amount of money they're trying to gather, and some of the equipment, even though it may not be located in the county, is gonna serve the county, right? So I don't know if that would, hit any walls in our grant requests, like if the money was being spent outside the county technically, but it is in support of our fire departments.
I feel like we've done funding previously for mutual aid, and so in my opinion, we would refer that request to budget as something different, right? Not as a grant request.
We could probably look up what we did last time.
That's what I'm doing right this second.
I'm sure they did come maybe 2 years back with it or so.
I don't believe I don't think we did anything last year, but I could be wrong.
It was to do with the paging system, right, upgrading, but he references it in this letter, and I thought.
Yes, we did Strait Area Grand Search and Rescue, but this is mutual aid.
Specific, I thought we had been approached with that, about a specific ask to do with the upgrading of the paging system.
Yes, and I thought that's how we
It
did
was
it.
for the antenna, wasn't it? Like for the,
Something like that, yeah, because the ground search and rescue was separate, I remember.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that generally falls in that first page of budgeted items.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'm hearing we should probably refer this to budget.
yeah, I'd like to see it referred to budget, but I'd also like to see that if our CFO feels it should go through the, grant process, then maybe
They'd be directed that way.
we direct them in that,
Yeah, like I say, my only concern would be as to whether or not maybe they don't qualify.
Right.
But it's still something that's affecting our county's fire services. And
Oh.
if that's the case, then we can talk about it in budget time, but otherwise I would agree with Councilor Digdon that we go through the same process as everybody else.
So some of the equipment they describe, and you'll forgive me for my lack of knowledge about, you know, fire department equipment and mutual aid equipment, but, you know, they're talking about, you know, SCBA's, cylinders, they're talking about, you know, spare supply of, you know, different types of breathing apparatus, or the high pressure packs. Wouldn't this be equipment that the fire departments would have?
so it is, so I guess part of, and I'll speak a little bit on this, or as good as I can without getting myself into uncharted waters. I know the Fort Hall
not every department would have that,
No,
just,
no,
and
just,
all the departments use it.
right, so,
Okay.
so they have the testing facility or whatever, the refilling facility there, and they also have many spare tanks, so I believe the process that they're looking to do is that, and I believe the process that Steve is ultimately looking to have, is that all fire departments end up with the same tanks, the same use or the same style. Because what happens is two different style tanks, is two different style hookups, and then you can't interchange them and you can't. So yeah, that's the,
Okay, good. That's helps me understand the request, yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing, some consensus that we would refer this to budget. Okay, so could I have a motion to that effect, so we get it captured in our action items?
we need a motion also to refer to the CFO for clarification.
Yeah.
See if it, just if it qualifies for a grant.
Yeah, I
Which
think
would
that
be great.
was what I thought we were thinking, that if the CFO felt it qualified for a grant request, that we.
Then we would recommend that.
Okay,
Otherwise, if it does not, then we could look at it separately as well.
great.
So I'm all
Makes sense. Okay, so the motion is to refer this matter back to the CAO, to evaluate whether or not it, is eligible for a grant application request, and if not, then to refer to budget.
It's through the CEO to the CFO.
Through the CAO to the CFO. Good catch. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Warden. Who made the motion? Councilor Digdon made the motion, and, it's been seconded by the Deputy Warden. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion is carried. All right, so the next item on the agenda is, a letter from Angela Sylvia regarding communities and blooms, an invitation to participate. So, we've included this because obviously it is correspondence received. They are, providing us with an opportunity to respond. We are not obligated to respond. We wanted to bring it here to see if there was an interest from council and really to get staff's perspective as well in terms of,
It's a tough one.
in terms of workload, frankly, and, are we ready for that this year?
I'm not sure. I know it's quite a large undertaking, and any of the communities I've been involved with that were part of Communities in Bloom, it can take a lot of time, and if you go into the competitive, it can get very costly because you're responsible for the reception, flying the judges here, all that stuff. All good stuff. If you have the budget for it, it's a wonderful program. But I've also found in the rural communities and the smaller villages, we have people doing a lot of this stuff already in the communities. Doesn't mean we can't learn from the Communities in Bloom program and some of the initiatives they have, but to be a fully active member, I don't think we necessarily need to go down that road.
So, councillors, would you be okay with that sort of perspective from staff at this point? Something we could consider for future years, maybe if,
100%.
things change. Yeah, agreed. Okay, great.
I like to see people planting out of pride as opposed to planting them out of.
A competition.
I think there's nothing wrong with a little healthy competition. Everything's a competition.
Did you see her vote this year?
No, I know, I did not make it. I did not make it.
He's not gonna let that, no.
Never. Well, we don't have a functioning lawnmower right now, so I might make it this year.
She might make it to no mow June.
Right. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is a letter from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities regarding the retroactive RCMP costs. And as you, I'm sure, are quite aware, the federal government has decided not to absorb retroactive costs associated with the latest collective bargaining agreement. And that's the collective bargaining agreement that is in place now, not even including the one that they're working on right now. And that is despite, I know, months
very significant. I mean, well, I'm just looking at Moncton at 80,000 people is 5.7 million. So the numbers are pretty close to the 750,000 for 10,000.
So I guess council, I'll just kind of circle back to my question, would you be supportive? And I would, even like to see maybe the resolution made this evening, that was provided, FCM provided a draft press release, which we can customize for Richmond County. They've provided a resolution, which was included in your package, and I'm wondering if you'd be supportive of passing that resolution this evening and issuing the press release.
Yes.
Yes, okay, Deputy Warden?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Sean and Councillor Digdon. Okay, all right, so maybe I'll just state the resolution for the viewers, but I guess I would probably need to do that. Yep, and just to be clear about what the resolution will be. So whereas the Government of Canada has made the decision in Budget 2023 to make municipalities responsible for all retroactive costs stemming from the latest RCMP collective bargaining agreement, and whereas these extraordinary one-time costs, which in some jurisdictions amount to millions of dollars, will cause significant hardship for communities and residents across the country, and were negotiated without meaningful
twice a year, which was great, and we had full agendas, we passed motions, and it was really good to find those connection points, right? It can be a really good opportunity, so if you want, you can leave this with me to start talking to Terry to see what this looks like, get some dates through a doodle poll, and then maybe we can get the two chairs to work on an agenda with us, if that works with you. Because we know your guys' schedule, right? And we know what, we're coming into conference season again, plus some other ones, so trying to get us all together could be tough, but if you want to leave that with us, we can easily take that on.
Okay, would councillors be supportive of that?
Yeah, I'm supportive of the meet. I'm a little leery sometimes of sharing what we might be working on if it's, and I don't like to say it like that, but I hate to let the pig out of the bag before we already got it caught. So, if we have something that's, imperative to Richmond County that we're really, striving for, we're pushing for to share that information.
Yeah, I'm sure both parties would have that kind of sensitive,
100%. So,
lens.
but there are some things that they do discuss here, that we do already share and that we both have, joint, like the airport and the concert and all that, so, yeah.
A shared industrial park.
Shared district practice, right?
There's a number of things.
Okay, so perhaps I could look for a motion then to refer this back to staff to coordinate a meeting date
Absolutely.
and,
Pool party.
let's leave it at that. Okay, so could I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, councillor Digdon.
They meet in the evening as well, they don't meet during the day, right, so it's evening meetings, okay.
Could I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, councillor Melanie Simpson. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Okay, so now we have a couple of items on the agenda under unfinished business. And the first item is a question period. Oh, did I skip that? My apologies. Correspondence for information only, that's what I get for scribbling on my agenda, I can't even read it anymore. For information only, that's right, thank you for the correction there. We did receive information from Celeste Hotel, the local coordinator for the Acting Collectively project regarding the Acting Collectively year-end report. And certainly I know Celeste would be open to hearing from councillors on this, and she's been doing a great job promoting the project and has made some great progress. Any comments on that report?
Maybe if we could, I'm sure we have already, but advertise it again on the county website, Facebook page, because I know that's one thing is they're still striving to try and get more
Yes.
people engaged with it. A lot of it tends to be word of mouth, but sometimes you hook the right few people and
That's
you
right.
spread like wildfire, right?
Yeah, Celeste also mentions like tapping into events where some older adults and seniors would be at, right? So those are good ideas, right? Community breakfasts, I know that
That's right.
recreation, Max was there for, probably the school's, Max was there taking a survey for Shannon and going table to table with a clipboard.
That's great.
You mentioned some friendly competition. I thought he was like taking notes.
These sausages are better.
I'm like, look at this guy. Look at this guy. He's going all over this guy.
Gauntlet is down.
But in all seriousness, it was a great idea. We sat down and took some questions. So I think that would be a great approach for sure.
Yeah, so maybe we could pop it out to public again and.
Sure.
Maybe we can send it both again to the Devil Station and the
Yeah,
smaller meeting
I think,
station, I guess, or whatever.
I think we would wanna just check to see where they may have put it directly already, you know what I mean? That we could maybe make that offer, but let them know. Okay, great. Okay, so now, rushing us along, unfinished business, is regarding the question period. Regarding the response from the Department of Finance on property tax sale. Regarding, this was about a lien on the property and the county accepting less than what is owed, is the remainder put on is only on the property owner. Troy, did you wanna?
I can take these only so far, and if people need anything beyond that, I will
first.
Right. Yeah, there could be other personal liens against it, but as far as the taxes, that's it, that's how that works.
Right, so, because when I read, it didn't say the county's lien on the property, so I think we wanna be clear that the only lien that is removed is the county's lien. If there are other liens on the property, that's totally.
We can't.
We can't do
They're
anything.
outside our control anyway.
Right.
Okay, are there any questions for Troy on that one?
So just for clarification, so, and I just wanna put it in simple terms, I guess, if RBC has a lien on property 1, 2, 3 for $30,000 and the county sells it for $10,000, are you saying that the new owner, the lien is still on that property for $20,000 even to the new owner?
I would have to check that with Jason to be sure, but I'm pretty sure that the RBC ones, we have no control over the RBC liens.
Not only, I think I know where you're going, but it wouldn't reduce it by that 10,000, because that 10,000 is going to the county anyway.
The liens
You
on.
know what I mean? They're selling it because of property tax arrears. So,
True. So I guess one of the questions to follow up I would have is the county able to draw their money out prior to the lien that was previously put in place? So can the county draw the $10,000 prior to the lien that was put in place by, let's say, RBC? So
Yep, I understand what you're saying, in terms of a creditor
In terms of
rating
credit,
type of
correct.
thing, yeah,
But there's an order for them.
we can
right,
consult
so I
with
guess
CFO.
my question would be, does the county then have to refer that 10,000 they got to RBC? Or to whoever the creditor is that says the lien?
We can check back with the CFO.
And I don't know. It's just,
There is a priority order there.
There is.
Okay, great, so thanks for that. Any other questions on that one? The next item is, regarding a property tax sale, if the municipality gets excess money from property that is sold at a tax sale, can the property owner ask for the difference between what is owed and what was received by the county?
There is a process involved where the extra is put aside for a period of up to 20 years and the persons can apply to claim it. It's not commonly done or requested, but there is a legal process to get access to any excess funds that have been gained in this way.
Which would be after the legal fees and all of the fees would have been deducted.
I would have to.
but yeah, you have some that, we saw just in the last one, some pieces of land went well above what was owed, and maybe in this case, it was much more.
Any other questions on that one? Okay, and just in terms of process, these obviously were questions that had come up in a previous meeting, question period. And after consulting with the CAO, we thought to put them here on the agenda kind of as an unfinished business. And that's how we'll handle those in future meetings, is that if a question is answered that has to be referred back to staff, this is where we'll put them on the agenda, we'll talk them under unfinished business and go from there.
But we also reach out to the resident who.
How the resident was.
She got an email already.
Yeah, as long as, I'm happy to see it come back here because there will be people in the public who would have heard it and want to know the answer as well, but I wanna make sure that the person.
And we can all learn from this, right? Because some of these things, I don't see these things, right? So.
I don't think we should advertise number 2, however.
Okay, so, the next item on the agenda then is the review of checks issued for March 2023. Were there any questions regarding the checks issued? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna just pop us over to the review of action items. Any questions or, on the action items presented? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to the next item, which is items added to the agenda. And we did have one item we needed to cover now under section 14. So over to you, Troy, to
Thank
discuss.
you, Madam Warden. We got approached by Jeremy Martel with the Cape Breton Wren and, well, in partnership with Cape Breton Wren, that we're looking to host an event here in Richmond with Doug Griffiths as the speaker. And of course, Doug wrote the 13 Ways to Kill Your Community book, and he now has his other book coming out. Great speaker. That's going to be an evening event and all those books that are in there, that's what they're for. It's for you guys as well. But it's a great opportunity. We could invite other municipalities. It's up to you guys. The evening event that the CD Ren is doing, there is no cost to us. It's just our turn to host it here in Richmond, which is fantastic. We get to fly our flag for this one. And the next day's event would be ours, though, if there's something we want to do.
Fish and chips.
Okay, thanks, Troy. I mean, it's a great opportunity. I think one of the first emails I probably sent to you is when we were first elected was related to Doug Griffiths and that particular manifesto, I like to call it, but, it's a fantastic. Yes, I did give you each a copy, yeah. Yeah, for sure. So it's a great opportunity that they're bringing to our door and that we will be hosting here in this county. It's kind of exciting.
Oh, the evening event's going to be at Lipicast. Yeah, they're already working on that with Lipicast down there. So we're getting them right out here on the island.
So where's the daytime part? Sorry.
The daytime's the next day with us, and that's something we get to decide.
Okay, great.
Well, we gotta meet.
Great. Yeah, I mean, do we want to go big here or do we want to keep it small? Like, is that?
And that's what Jeremy was thinking. Do you want to do like a little version, one Cape Breton, and invite our municipal partners across the island and do like a breakfast thing or a lunch thing with Doug as the keynote? Is there a strategic way that we can use his lens while we have him here to talk over something that we're currently working on? Again, it's I don't know. And if we can give him ideas ahead of time, then of course Doug could better prepare himself and be ready for us.
Well, maybe I'll just chime in. My thoughts on always too big. I would like to make the most of this opportunity. And absolutely, it's an opportunity for us to maybe host some of our partners. I am kind of wondering about how we could open this message to community though too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we could. Maybe it's and that's where Doug really excels is engaging the community groups as well. So maybe, and Jeremy said it doesn't have to be a whole island thing. It could be a Richmond thing with nothing but our community groups, council staff and community groups with Doug Griffiths in some kind of a planning session with him on how we can better communicate with one another. It's not a bad idea.
Rather than the one Cape Breton thing, only because I think there's a lot of people that maybe wouldn't otherwise get the chance to spend a bit of time listening to him and so on. So I think I prefer to see something
Maybe we do one Richmond.
around Richmond.
Yeah, and I will tell you, this is several years back, just in the village of St. Peter's, I had started to investigate like how can we get a speaker in that would really kind of re-energize community and et cetera, and the costs were just not, it was cost prohibitive. We were not going to be able, as a nonprofit organization, to be able to afford that, so it's an excellent point if we were to the opportunity.
I think that one thing that we've talked about, since we started sitting at this table was our desire to work with the community groups, work with the volunteers, for us to help them and them to help us. And if that could be a bit of the topic in terms of like what are ways, and I suspect his presentation would be interactive in that people would be participatory to help with the, like, how can I help you? How can we help, how can we help each other? So I do like that idea because I think often, like community groups are looking for us to help them, but you can't help those that you don't know need help. Or whatever. So in my mind, I think that might be a good conversation to have with him leading the topic. Just in my mind.
Councillors, would you be okay with that?
I think if you lead in that direction too, it might be something to, like the CEO said, maybe we can provide him with some of the basic questions that some of the organizations might have, and he can And again, there'll be some obviously some pop-up questions that somebody will just come to mind and want to ask, which is fine. But if he has some that he can already bang,
So I think what we could do at this point is maybe we could leave that with you to connect back with Jeremy, but also, to Doug, to talk about, what it could look like, and so, cause I think there are times when I've seen him host like for large groups of people, a couple hundred people, and it's less interactive, but then if we wanted it to be more interactive and more workshopy, how many people that would kind of look.
What does that look like for him?
And maybe we can do both, I don't know, but I think maybe leave it with you for that conversation, if we have a direction of, we want this to be all focused on, the benefits of the community organizations who work so hard.
Yeah, because I'd love to see more people come and if the only option
Yes.
for more people to come is for it to be less workshopy.
Right.
But it could be partnered with like a form that a person fills out at the end of the day that talks about how did this help, what can we do to,
What's our next step?
right, something like that we could then gather and then action.
Great.
Lots of post-it notes.
Okay, sounds great, so, I don't know, maybe we do need a motion then to refer this opportunity to staff to pursue, a community-focused event. Okay, thank you, Deputy Warden. Could I have a second? Councillor Sean Sampson has seconded it. Any further discussion on that item? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion is carried. All right, the next item on the agenda is the 15-minute question period. So the number to call, if you're calling in, is 902-226-9885. And this question period is not restricted to items on the agenda. We'll max it out at 15 minutes, but if we don't receive any questions, either from folks in the gallery or on the phone, then we will close it out earlier. And I think we no longer have a delay on the broadcast. Maybe a few moments, okay. So we'll just give it a minute. 902-226-9885 is the number to call. Or questions from the gallery are welcome as well. All right. And I would just like to say that the Cape Breton Tartan tablecloth is a lovely addition to council chambers. I don't think we've officially recognized it yet.
And plus, April 6th.
Well done.
And we can share that we've confirmed the executive director for Gaelic Affairs will be coming to help you raise the flag.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And he was, years ago, made the National Bard of Scotland, the first non-Scottish person ever to be given that title. And Lewis he's quite the individual, so.
That sounds like a big deal. I love it. That's great. We'll have to roll out the red carpet. Okay, well, I'm not hearing any questions. Yeah, the tartan carpet. The tartan carpet. I'm not hearing any questions coming on the phone. Thank you, Shelley, for standing at the ready for us. So, next items on the agenda are two in-camera items that we have regarding contract negotiations. So I'll look for a motion with this in camera, please. Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Whittington. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that motion is carried. All right, so thanks